We're talking with Eric Law, who is a member of the Atlas Lacrosse Club and the PLL, a Colorado native. And I typically start out with a question as it relates to your background and kind of how it. I read a quote in doing some research for this that you once scored 9 goals on 9 shots. So, as a scorer, here's my question. I'm an offensive guy, so I pride myself in thinking I know a little bit about offense. Talk to me about what you think the most important aspect of shooting is. Is it point of release? Is it understanding where you can go? And my point to all of that is that you're the most accurate shooter, one of the more accurate shooters I've ever watched.
Well, I think a lot of times when you hear 9 shots and 9 goals, you must think that I'm this crazy big time shooter. And I think all of those goals had an average of about 3.5 yards away from the goal. So right on top of the goalie. And that's where, I've been known to kind of make kind of my living is just always just right around the crease type area. So for me, it's all about deception. And it's all about, quick hands and a quick fake on the goalie, freezing the goalie just for even a half a second, and then putting it where it's not. And, sometimes I think shooting can become such a head game, and it becomes such a you overthink it. You try to do too many things. Sometimes maybe you try to throw too many fakes. And a lot of times I just try to keep it as simple as possible. Fake high and throw it low, throw it right around the goalie and increase your angle and throw it around him. And that's always – I'm a very simple, fundamental player, as in I don't throw a lot of behind the backs. I don't throw one-hand stuff. I try to do the most fundamental things as well as I can. And it's actually funny. In college, I used to get made fun of all the time by our backup goalies because we had a bunch of Canadians on our team that would come in and throw 5, 6, 7 fakes and have the goalie basically falling over and have this awesome goal. And then I would come in, I would fake once, finish around the crease and score. And they're like, you are the most boring but efficient finisher. And I think that's the biggest compliment I think I've ever been given by a goalie.
Now, you're not I don't think you have a lot of box in your background. Am I correct?
I actually played a bit growing up. Right when I was starting to play, like when I was in like fifth grade is when the Mammoth came into town.
Right.
And they started a junior Mammoth team. And actually my coach was John Gallant, which is kind of funny to see it come all full circle with that. But they were like the first ones to teach real box. So I would play just a little bit as a kid. And then in high school, they would have some links, but it wasn't actual true box lacrosse. It was you're playing lacrosse indoors is basically essentially what it was. And then my first real look at like true box was in college with Coach Matt Brown. Like every once in a while we would do we'd go inside at DU and play a legit box and kind of learn the actual technique of that. And then I did end up playing for a year up in Toronto, my first year, and then my rights got traded back to the Mammoth, and unfortunately I went through a handful of years of off-season surgeries that never really allowed me to play it. And it's definitely one regret. I wish I could go back and do it again, but I love the box game.
So my follow-up is that we know that box is I'm a Canadian guy, grew up that way, and I understand it's a close, tight game. You finish like a box player, but with limited box experience as compared to the other guys that you've played with, the Jeff Snyders and some of the guys who've come down past the border. So is it a learned skill? And I think being a crease guy is probably the hardest position in the world to play. So to me, point of release has got to be one. I mean, I understand the fake part of it, but it's harder to score from 3 feet sometimes than it is to have a big step down from 20 yards out.
Oh, yeah. I definitely agree with that. It definitely is the point of the release. And I think part of it is also some of the way that people have their sticks strung. I see kids, especially kids growing up, and they try to have these sticks that have so much whip and so much hold that they're trying to shoot the ball, as hard as they possibly can, but have no idea where the ball is going. And I've always been a guy that, again, I get made fun of all the time for the way that my stick looks because it's basically a banana pocket. The whole stick is the pocket. And, and when anyone asks, I'm like, why wouldn't you have the biggest pocket possible to let you catch everything and then the ball comes out quickly, that you don't need to have the ball in your stick for very long to be effective? And I think that's kind of been part of it. And then learning how to be right around the goal kind of has always kind of been something that I had to get used to because I was never the biggest kid on the field, especially growing up. I've always been on the smaller side of things. And my freshman year of high school, I was starting on our varsity team. my head coach was Brian Langtree at the time. And he just taught me that, you don't need to have the ball on your stick to be effective. And it was always, trying to play that annoying little brother game with your defenseman, or the cat and mouse of, he looks one way and I'm going to step on the other side of the crease for, 1 second. And if I do a job of like, he gets lost, yeah, I'm open and maybe I can score. Or if not, he's then worried about me and I'm pulling him away from being the help defenseman. And that was kind of always the game I loved playing. I have 2 older brothers, so it's really easy for me to play the annoying little brother role. I feel like I do it pretty well. And I think they would probably say that I do it pretty well too.
Right.
But then that's always just something I got comfortable with, is just being right around the crease and always just trying to make it as simple as possible once we break it down.
We sometimes will use I coach women's club lacrosse for a long time, and one of the things I learned is that we use sometimes for my crease guys, we'll use just especially on some of the figure 8 drills and some of the stuff on the inside, is use a woman's stick. Because now you've got to have, and it has to be a quick release.
Yep, it's on your wrist.
And while conversely, then teaching with the young women, sometimes I'm getting them learn how to shoot step downs with a women's stick, which if you can get in the right position and all the other things that go with it. So that's something that you got to really have a clear understanding. But having that big basket to catch makes it difficult for a crease guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got to have a stick. And I've always heard stories of back in the day at Princeton, Coach T made all of his crease guys have like basically a tennis racket of a stick because he hated people that always had the big bags on their stick because he thought it took them forever to get out. And I definitely think that's something that's taken over. But I agree. I think if more kids and more boys learned how to play with the girls lacrosse stick, they'd be much more skilled, because some of the things that those girls are doing now is just is jaw dropping. It's pretty incredible.
That thought coming from a defensive coach.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking with Eric Law, who's a member of the Atlas Lacrosse Club, and this is Greg Norman. I'm your host for the 24th edition of the Michigan Lacrosse Review. I really appreciate you coming aboard and having a conversation. We get into the meat of the discussion. There's 1,000 things I want to talk about, but I want to take it all the way back to Highland. I think Highland Elementary School, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Where was the first time you picked up a stick? And I say that based on the fact that you have a unique situation. You played high school in Denver. You played college in Denver. You played for the bulk of, other than the PLL, you played your pro career in Denver. So you're one of those really rare guys that didn't have to get in a plane. I mean, you could literally drive from home.
Yeah, it was first of all, I'm extremely thankful. I know how lucky I am to have those things, be able to play my high school, my college, and my professional, a bulk of my professional career all here in Denver. And it's such a special place to me, and the lacrosse community here, and just this whole state. Just it means a whole lot to me to be able to have those experiences here. But I first picked up a lacrosse stick when I was very young. I think I was probably about 3 or 4 when I first picked up a stick. I have 2 older brothers. My oldest brother is 7 years older than me. We were a big baseball family. My dad was a big baseball player. So that was kind of always our thing. And then my oldest brother, he had a couple friends that were playing lacrosse, and he was getting bored with baseball and decided, I kind of want to go try this new lacrosse thing. So I believe he started when he was in 6th or 7th grade. So then I kind of just was always around it. So of course I saw my older brother have a stick, so I needed a stick. And then I was just always the kid running around on sidelines with a stick in his hand. And I first got on my first team when I was in 1st grade, and I was a 1st grader on a 3rd grade team because my other older brother was playing. And for the longest time, my mom was begging the coach to let me go play. And the coach kept looking over at me and being like, no, he's way too small. Like, he's going to get hurt. And my mom just kept telling him, like, you'd be surprised. He can hold his own. Like, don't worry about that part. And then it actually was a game, and 3 of the kids were sick. So they needed a couple bench players, basically. And the coach looked over and was like, all right, like, he can suit up for this game, but, like, don't expect him to get in. And lo and behold, the one shift I did get in, I'm pretty sure I scored a goal. And from the rest of the year, the coach let me stay on the team. So started playing when I was in first grade when I was at Highland, and then went on to play at Arapahoe High School, and then had a short stint at Salisbury University my first year for D3, and then was able to make the transfer back home to DU and play in front of my my family and friends, and it's kind of been going ever since there. So
Now, you're kind of the product, and I'll kind of go back to Arapahoe. You were a 2009, I believe, state champion.
we are, yep.
Arapahoe, we should point out, is in Denver. It's not up in Dillon County. It's not part of A Basin up that way. So it's a suburb. It's a suburb of Denver. The lacrosse in Denver over the last, say, 10 or 12 years has certainly been. It's taken a national level. I think of San Diego, where I lived for a long time, Torrey Pines. Yeah, you think of it out east, but I think Denver, was that the advent of maybe Jamie coming to Denver, Jamie Monroe coming there back 20 years ago to start that process?
I definitely think that has a huge piece of it, because there was always a lacrosse community in Denver. There was always a good group just from people that had moved here from back east and kind of brought it. And lacrosse has always been played here, but it just wasn't that big. You know, it was considered a club sport in high school. So there was probably, you know, back, like, my dad technically said he played lacrosse. I don't really believe him, but he technically said he played lacrosse for his high school team that maybe had 5 teams in the whole state that played. And then once Jamie kind of came into town, you started to see this big growth because DU started to come on the map. And then it was a big thing that people wanted to go watch games. And at the old Peter Barton Stadium, before it even was called Peter Barton, it just used to be a big concrete slab with the old AstroTurf on it. And then it was just hills. And it was just a big hill that you could go watch the games on. And it was free just to go watch. And so that's how a lot of people ended up kind of falling in love with it, because you were right on top of the games. It was free. DU obviously had incredible players, and that was like right as the time as like Mike Law was coming into town. So he was a incredibly electrifying player to watch. And then from there, the sport just kind of kept getting more popular and more popular. And then kind of the big boom kind of happened when the Mammoth came into town, the Outlaws came into town. And then certainly when Coach T took over at DU, it just has been exploding ever since. And it's been fun to see, even growing up when I was a kid. Like the first couple of years I started playing, there was maybe 5 organizations throughout the whole state that played. I'm thinking by the time that I was in 8th grade, I think there was probably around like 30 to 40 different organizations that are playing. And the same thing, it just keeps growing and growing, even at the high school level. Being able to have 2 classes, there's a 4A class and a 5A class of high school now, is something that the sport needed to do. And it's just it's been fun to see the rise of the sport, and people just enjoy the game and appreciate the game the way that it's supposed to be played, and loving having a stick in their hands.
If you played lacrosse in warm weather, is there a hobby in the winter since you live in the mountain near the mountains?
So funny thing, you know, people always expect, being a Colorado kid, that, you know, I'm skiing every weekend, I'm fly fishing, I'm hiking, I'm doing that stuff. To be honest, last year was the first year ever that I had a ski pass. You know, that was the first time in my life. And actually this last summer after our PLL bubble was the first time I ever climbed a 14er. So I'm now, right when I'm about to turn 30, I'm crossing off all these Colorado icons. But back growing up and everything else in the winter, you know, we were a big sports family. So I was always playing basketball, always playing different sports. It always just kind of made it difficult for us to get up to the mountains all the time, which I definitely regret now, but definitely able to keep in the beauty of Colorado and take it for all its glory now.
Having grown up in the community you mentioned John Gallant, and I think you mentioned Brian Langfield. And if those are junior coaches, if those are guys that are coaching at the high school level and at the travel level, it's not many high school kids, or even that matter travel kids, that get a chance to be coached at that level with those kinds of players. That's unique to your area, wouldn't you think?
Oh, big time unique. And that's what I think was a huge development as a lacrosse player, and helped me kind of understand the game more, as I was extremely thankful for the coaches that I had, especially growing up and kind of like my development process of, you know, those I think the super important years, your late middle school and early high school years, I think are so important to your development as understanding the actual game. Yeah, you might not be your big, physical, strong at that point, but I feel like that's the time in your life that you really got to learn the game and learn um, you know, the littlest of things, the IQ type things, the way the game should be played, and the way that the game flows. And I was extremely, extremely thankful for the coaches I had that kind of brought that to my eyes and then kind of showed me, the game within the game that's been going on, and definitely skills that I've been able to take with me to each level that I've been able to thankfully move on to.
Did your coaching with the coaching you got at that level, you mentioned that you were a slighter guy size-wise. Did it help having guys who really understood the game so that you didn't get destroyed by bigger, stronger guys?
Oh, absolutely. Especially one of the main ones that comes to mind is Brian Langtree. So when I was a freshman, when I was going into my freshman year of high school, I was about 5 foot, 105 pounds. So, I was a tiny, tiny guy out there, and he worked with me. So right when I knew that I was going into high school, that like summer before going to high school in spring, we had practices, and he would come out and suit up with us. And that was like his time. Like he would come out and suit up. We had a couple seniors out of the team that were pretty talented that he wanted to get his touches in before he was be flying out to his own Outlaws games. And he wanted to make sure he wasn't getting too rusty. So when he was coming out, and he just taught me how to be a smaller guy, but still be effective. So it was, playing a cat and mouse game around the goal of reading when a defense is going to slide and how to follow the slider and put yourself in a position to always be a threat to score. And not only that, but also he taught me how to be able to dodge and not get absolutely crushed by the big guys. And it worked out. And I only got to play for him for 1 year, because after that he then went over and took a job at the Cherry Creek School District. So then he wanted to replace. So I had another coach come in, but really that year I think was huge for development of me understanding that not every player is going to play the exact same way. And you can't just, have one system and plug a guy in and say, here you go, good luck. It's really working with what each person has and working with what they don't have. And I think that's what he really showed me as a coach and helped me develop into a player that I think that I'm still 100% using a lot of those things, as I'm still not the biggest or fastest guy in the league.
A lot of our high school and our college offense is based on being able to feed inside to that crease guy. And the term we use is stealth. You got to be behind somebody. You got to be where they're not. So you have to be able to read those kinds of things. And I'm asking this question is for a couple of reasons. It's funny that a couple of days ago, I've got a young freshman coming in who has all the tools to be a really good high school player. I've got him on the crease because I believe I can teach him to be stealth. Now, he's been an 8th grade phenom. I'm asking this question for a guy named Tony Ketch, and he'll get a kick out of the discussion, because we had an almost an hour discussion about this young man whose name is Colin. And the point I'm making to him is that he plays the crease because he's got the tools, but at X, where he probably should play, doesn't work, because the simple reason is he doesn't have the foot speed to get away and make his own shot if it were basketball, for example. But he's so smart and he's so quick release with his hands, and he's 5'6", 120 pounds. But I think he could play that position, and the reason I'm asking these questions is that when Tony watches this, he'll know I'm right, and he's one of my assistant coaches, and he said it's a bad decision. But you can play the crease, and you don't have to be a monster to play the crease.
No, not at all. And I think actually, like you said, like you can be even more stealthy. And you don't have to be a big guy. You just have to be someone that can always find the lane and find the holes and just make it tough and miserable for a defenseman to play you. And I think that, again, that's one of the biggest compliments I've ever received from a couple guys in the league. They say, every time we're playing you guys, like, we hate playing you specifically because you're constantly moving. As soon as we turn our head, you're somewhere else. We always have to worry about you. And when you're getting that compliment from someone, you're doing something right. So I don't think it matters how big you are when you're on the crease. If you can be stealthy, if you can be and put yourself in a constant spot that you're constantly a threat to the defense, and you can catch the ball inside and catch passes that you're not supposed to catch and finish, you're going to be a dangerous player and a great tool to any offense. And I know, coming from also playing X, that if you have a guy inside that can catch anything, you become that guy's best friend. Yeah.
And if you got a guy that can catch everything, it's going to make him better, because I keep pointing out, if you're a point chaser, an assist counts the same as a goal. So
exactly,
you got 120 points. Nobody's ever asked anybody that had 100 points in the season saying, by the way, can you break that down for me, whether that's assists or goals?
Yeah, which one of those goals and which one of those assists? Exactly.
Nobody's ever made that discussion. It's kind of
exactly
kind of that approach. high school, you had some great success, so you win a state championship. Were you highly recruited? And I asked this question because how does a kid with a state championship in Denver get all the way to D3 Salisbury?
Yeah, so kind of going off that whole, I was pretty small throughout my whole high school career. By the time I was a senior, I was about 5'8", 145 pounds. So I definitely hit a growth spurt and kind of grew up a little bit. Um, was recruited by some D1 schools, kind of like not the top end, but kind of like the middle to lower end. And then actually kind of during that time that you were getting recruited, it was still kind of very later. So kind of getting back to what it is now, you were kind of getting recruited after your junior year, going into your senior year, like after your junior summer. So I was in discussion with a couple of different schools, and Salisbury and Coach Berkman were always very hot on me, and were always staying very consistent and always kept reaching out to me, and showed a lot of interest. And then the other couple of schools, the D1 schools I was talking to, kind of got very wishy-washy at the end. And actually two different coaches ended up telling me that, they think I'm a good player, but they don't think I would ever play or start. They think I'd be a practice player for the first 3 years. And then maybe if I was lucky by the last year, I'd get on man up or something like that. And to be honest, that completely turned me off from the school. I was like, if you're not even going to give me a chance to come in and earn a spot and already made up your mind about what kind of player I am, I'm going to go to a school that believed in me. And Coach Berkman from the get-go showed a lot of interest. And again, going and playing for Coach Berkman was one of the best experiences I've had. I learned so much from him by the style that he plays, and it just shows. Like, you see how many championships he's won, how many games he's won, and how well that program's done. And it's not a fluke why they're always a contender each year. I learned how to work my absolute tail off, and you had to be competitive if you wanted to see the field when you were there. So that kind of happened, and then unfortunately during my freshman year, I broke my collarbone. I think it was like the third game of the year, and was out for an extended period of time. And it was during that time that I realized, if I did go back to school there and had another injury, I would rather be closer to home and near some friends and family. And two of my best friends were on the team at DU, and they kept telling me, we think that you'd love it here. You should make your way back. And so decided after my freshman year that I was going to go and try to walk on to the DU lacrosse team. And thankfully it worked out. Kind of took a shot on myself, and it's kind of been one of the best decisions ever made for me, both as a person and a lacrosse player. I'm just forever grateful for Coach Berkman and allowing me to come there for a year, and then also to Coach T and Coach Brownie, and have let me walk on the squad.
I asked that question with an intent, and the intent is you were moderately recruited in high school, despite being a state champion. Salisbury, by every account, is one of the best Division III schools in the country. I mean, he's had success there for years. And it used to be that Division III teams, you go back 20 years, Division III teams could play with an awful lot of Division I teams. So that's been a little bit different, because I think there's some D2 programs that have taken over. So you're certainly playing at a high level, but you're now considered one of the best players in the world at a time when in your life you were a moderately recruited high school kid. And so my point to it is work matters, and it isn't that everybody comes out as Tiger Wood when they're 12. And you're the perfect example of that. And that's kind of what I think kids need to hear, that, because you can make it. So my question to you is, between being a moderately recruited high school kid and becoming one of the best players in the world, is there a thread? Is it the chip on the shoulder, or is it just constant putting your 10,000 hours in?
I think it's a combo of both. I definitely think obviously you got to put the work in, off the field when no one's watching it, and you got to love the process of it. And I think that's what a lot of the guys do, is you just love. I love working out, and I love getting better at lacrosse. Like, it's just always been a constant theme in my life, is I've always loved getting better. And the other part is, you do have to have that chip on your shoulder that, when people doubt you, it fuels that fire, and it makes you want to be better. And I feel like I've had that kind of my whole life and my whole career, whether it's not being big enough, it's like, well, I'm going to show you that it doesn't matter to be how big, or not fast enough, or whatever it may be. That you're going to prove to them that it doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to go out and outwork you, and I think that also comes from my deep competitiveness. Man, I can't. Anyone that has played anything with me, whether it's dominoes or anything, and I'm not only gonna want to beat you, I'm gonna want to dominate you. And it's one of those things, you hate losing more than you like winning, and I definitely think that's a true statement that I feel. And there's definitely times I wish it wasn't that way. I wish I could just go out and play and not be competitive and just enjoy and be everything. But I definitely think it's fueled me and got me to where I am, that, putting in that extra work and seeing that work pay off, I think is also one of the most rewarding things. Of you see yourself work so hard and you make it your goal that's what you want to go do. And when you are able to reach that, it's like a natural body high that you just want to keep chasing and keep setting more goals and going and achieving it more. But yeah, I definitely see it's more that chip on the shoulder that if you tell me I can't do something, well, I'm going to make it my life's goal to show you that I can do it. So I think it's a combo of both of those things.
I don't have any scientific evidence, but I've coached a number of groups of brothers.
Yeah.
And it always seems that the youngest one always seems to be the toughest and the best, because he's gotten his butt kicked by his two older brothers. And I would say that also applies. I've had some young ladies that I've had sisters that have played for us, and not necessarily always the best, but certainly the toughest. And I think there must be something to that. And I have a hard time understanding it because I have an only child, and I was an only child. So I'll leave that, to understanding for you guys from that. When you went to Denver, you kind of settled in. How long you were part of the 2015 championship for Coach Tierney and the staff, right?
I was not. So I actually graduated in 2013.
That's right. You did.
So I was there for 2011, 2012, and 2013.
So you're one of the guys that helped get that program up and running with.
Yeah. Let's say we were able to be the first team to kind of make that breakthrough. DU and Denver had always had so much talent, even back to like the Jamie Monroe years with the Canadians, even with Coach Brown that was playing for that today. Like, they were so talented. And then when Coach T came in, he just brought so much more structure and so much more discipline to the program, and was just consistent. And those 3 years that I was at DU were it was just so fun to be a part of, especially that first year in 2011 of the first time, hosting a tournament game. And then we ended up making it to the Final Four. But talking with some of my old teammates and thinking back on it, there was actually a game that year that we played Duke at the Battle of Bethpage. It was in Long Island, where both Coach T and Coach Danowski are from, and their hometowns. And Duke, I think at the time, was either ranked number 2 or number 3, and we were in the teens. Like, we always hovered right around like the 15 to 20 range going into it, and we beat Duke, and that was one of the biggest, most fun wins that I can remember ever having. And it was kind of one of those times that it just takes that one win to kind of get a little bit of belief in each other, and then from that on, we believed that we could play and beat anyone at any given day. And that mentality kind of stayed with us throughout the rest of the years I was there. And I think is still part of the program now, that we believe we're one of the big boys, and we believe it, and we belong at the top.
Were you part of Coach's first year there?
I was not. I was the second year.
Second year. Here's my question. They moved on from Jamie. They obviously go find one of the best coaches that's ever coached lacrosse. And I think Denver made a decision by hiring him to put a stamp on it. This program's important to us. And I think that was an extension of what Jamie started. But with the stadium renovation and all of taking all the field turf off and making that opportunity. And then they had certainly a Canadian pipeline with bringing guys down, but they started to supplement it. You're the local guy, which I think would be beneficial to the program. I do apologize for not recognizing that you weren't there in 15, but my question.
That's okay.
My question.
I like to take credit for it.
Yeah, no, but I don't think they get to 15 without with the plans that was laid earlier than those things. But I think the university's understanding, when we interviewed Coach Tierney, it was when he went out, he was going back to Denver as a consultant. And when he walked in the room, there's 100 people welcoming him to the family if he wanted the job. And I think the university made a very concerted effort to make that happen. And I follow this up by saying that their club teams that are nationally ranked, and I'm involved with some of those guys. Denver does a unique job of supporting its athletics. Think of hockey. Maybe because they don't have a football team, other sports take on a different understanding. But you were there when that thing started to rise. So my question is that a fair estimation from the outside looking in that the university made that choice?
Oh, absolutely. I think hands down that the decision that the school made of investing in the program with a coach like Coach T, and it showed the program, it showed the whole state that they want to be good at lacrosse and they want to make it a thing, and they're going to be investing in it. And it all comes back to Peg Dably-Doppis, who brought Coach T in, and I think Coach T was always on the list as kind of like the home run guy. He's like your dream candidate. Anytime you're looking for someone, you're thinking, who's our maybe out of reach dream guy, and then you kind of have a couple of the candidates, and I think he was at the top, very, very top of that list. And when he made that decision to come here, it showed that DU is going to be a lacrosse school, and that's what's going to be known for. It's going to be known for hockey, obviously, for having, I believe, 9 national championships in its historic career, and then it's a lacrosse program, which makes it really fun, I think, for the whole school. And well, obviously, we can't take away the skiing national championship. I think they have about 50 or something like that, and I'm pretty sure they won
27.
all 3 when I was at there. Yeah, 27.
27.
So they won all 3. They won back to back to back when I was there, which is incredible. I mean, when you have a school win that much, it says a lot about the program, the stuff they have going there, and then showing the support to the hockey program. And then they kind of said that lacrosse is going to be our next one. And Coach T came in there right there, and that was his goal from day one. He said that he is going to bring a national championship to Denver. I remember that's what he said. And when he was getting all the interviews around town about why he was coming to Denver, and at the time as a Denver local person, just as a fan of Denver lacrosse at the time, when I was not even at the program, it was like, I can't believe he's saying that he's going to bring a championship. Almost you're kind of like, yeah, good luck. Like, is that actually going to happen? Like, no one, not a school that hasn't touched the Atlantic Ocean has ever won. And fair enough. In the second year that he is at a program, he brings him to the Final Four. And I think that just goes to show the kind of leader he is. Not necessarily the X and O's, which obviously he's incredible at, but just a leader of men and a leader of people, and how contagious he is in that belief, and that you want to play for him, you want to believe in him, and you're going to do everything you can to bring success for him in the program.
I know I want to ask how it was like playing for him, but I want to preface it by asking, he really is Jekyll and Hyde. And here's my point. I knew of reputation. I've met him a few times at coaching clinics, and then I had a chance to sit down and talk to him for the show. And at the end of our allotted time, I let the time run and just kept the record on Zoom. And he and I talked for another hour. And we were just basically, we're 2 years apart in age, and we started telling stories. Yep. And I had a story and he had a story, and I put some of that up. And he pointed out to me that every time he gets a little cocky about stuff, he comes home and his wife reminds him that he'd lost his last game at RIT before he'd gone to Hopkins, like 25-0 or something, to kind of ground him. My question to you, and Matt Brown alluded to the fact that he's grandpa in the locker room, and when he steps over the line, is he really 2 people? And you played for him, so I want to listen to your definition.
I would even maybe take it one step further and say that he's almost 3 different people. So there's Coach T off the field, who is like your favorite uncle. He's just the guy that like you can talk to, telling funny stories with, joking around, having an awesome time, and just giggling and laughing. Then there's number 2, which is practice Coach T, and he's the guy extreme serious. He's incredibly can't think of the word, but like he wants everything to be absolutely perfect. He expects perfection out of his players all the time, and at practice he's gonna let you know. So he's gonna get on people, he's gonna ride people, and then there's some days he's gonna absolutely just pick one person to kind of like rip into, to see how they react and like see how they do with the pressure. And when you're when it's you during practice, you're like, man, get off my case, man. Like, all right, sorry. And then there's number 3, Coach T, and that's game day Coach T. And game day coach T is just on another level. And if you've ever seen a game and he's losing his mind on a ref, that's just another side of him. And again, it's because he's a perfectionist and he wants everything to be absolutely perfect. And he cares so much for his kids that's why he gets the way he does. So it's you never want to be the one that he goes off on during a game or during a practice. But yeah, I would say he's about three different levels of him.
That may be a generational thing, because I think there's, as you're describing some things there, I'm sort of self-absorption. It may be a generational thing that's different from my generation to yours, but that's your development at Denver has to also be somewhat credited to Matt Brown, because Matt's one of those guys. In fact, I mentioned this during the interview when we talked to Matt. Matt is to Bill what Jerry Byrne was, I think, to Kevin Corrigan, in terms of having that another head coach on the staff that's more than happy to be that coach. Matt could be coaching any place in America, but he's happy where he is, and he's got to be one of the brightest offensive minds that I've ever talked to.
I mean, personally, I think he's the smartest offensive mastermind I've talked to. And for my development as seeing an offense that he's creating and kind of then understanding it and like picking it up as I went on through the years was something that was super fun. And me and Coach Brown ended up having a very good relationship, and we would bounce ideas off each other of, what kind of steps should we take to attack a certain team and attack a certain defense and the ways that it can flow and different kind of sets and motions and stuff. But no, I think he is like the mastermind of offense, especially in the current day offense right now. He was one of the first ones to kind of use that high wing dodge and really focus on more so let the ball do the work and the people do the work. And now when you look around the country, I mean, even look at like a Penn State now, their offense the past couple of years has been very much so just a motion type offense that focuses on moving the ball quick and getting it in and out of your stick. And I think that can all come down to like what Coach Brown did, not only at D, but when he did with Team Canada as well.
Yeah.
So it's been super fun to watch him, and it's always fun to pick his brain more about offensive stuff and just see kind of what he's thinking. But I definitely attribute my understanding of offenses and also understanding defenses to Coach Brown.
Is your expertise and understanding closed spaces having something to do with Matt's understanding of box? I'm assuming you got to pick up a few things along the way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's how I feel like I learned the game, was just from talking to him. Never actually like really playing much true box, but just listening to him and other guys on our team, like a Mark Matthews and a Jerry Minnell, Cam Flint, kind of talking and explaining different kind of box things. I felt like I picked it up and I could go kind of be a part of it and pick it up on the fly.
Your degree from Denver is in business management, if I'm not mistaken. And then my question is, what did you want to do? If you weren't going to be a professional lacrosse player, what was the step out?
Yeah, I've always loved kind of being a part of like a team. That's, I feel like, something I've always really loved is working in team and working with people and at the end, like kind of working with athletes. And that's what I kind of wanted to do. And so coming out of school, I didn't really necessarily know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to sit behind a desk and crunch numbers all day. That was about like the only thing I knew. I personally just couldn't do. I'm not one of those people that can sit down and kind of do that thing. So I didn't know what I want to do. I felt like I did want to do something in the sports world. And then thankfully I got approached by a dad and his son who started a program in Denver called Denver City Lax, a nonprofit youth organization that provides the opportunity to play lacrosse to at-risk kids in Denver and use lacrosse as an educational and enrichment opportunity to further their life skills. And they kind of approached me as a part-time guy while I was still looking for jobs and while I was still kind of doing the whole lacrosse thing right when I first graduated. And then I've loved it so much that kind of each month it just kind of kept extending. And then little do we know, I'm going on year 8 with the program now. And I've loved every single second of it. And it's brought so much more meaning to me to the game of lacrosse and what it can do for people. And lacrosse has given me so many opportunities and so many opportunities that people took a chance on. me. You know, Coach T and Coach Brown took a chance on me of being able to come back to play DU. Even going to the Outlaws took a chance on me. I still like to say that the only reason why they drafted is because I was the local kid and they had a draft spot that they just needed to kind of pick someone. So they picked a local kid and took a chance on me. And so I've always felt it's my biggest responsibility to go back and present another opportunity and give chances to kids. And
Okay.
that's what I'd love to do.
Let me back up a little bit. You come out of school. This is before you're drafted. You decide to go along with your organization, Denver City Lax. A lot of pro athletes that make lots of money set up foundations. Sometimes it's because they have it from their heart, and I think that's most of the time. But a lot of it is because it's a financial aspect that they can use it for their benefit because they make lots of money. That's just the way the world is. I get that. So your philanthropic thread that goes through it all of your life had to start someplace. I'm assuming it had to start with mom and dad. There must have been something you were taught at home because you jump in with Denver City Lax. Yes, you're a great Denver lacrosse player. And you're a local kid, and I get all those other kinds of things. But typically, 7, 8 years out now, there's more about this with your heart than there is with your pocketbook. So talk about how you think about things in that way, and what your commitment is to that process. Because maybe mom and dad did something well.
My mom and dad, I can't thank enough for what my mom and dad did for me growing up and for my brothers. They were such great providers for us. They were so supportive in everything we did. They never pushed us to do anything. It was always, they were always going to be our biggest cheerleader and supporter and always taught us that there's always two sides of everything and you could always have it very different, and that we were blessed to have the opportunities that we were. But then, my mom and dad both, especially my mom is a pediatric dentist and has always loved working with kids. And that kind of runs through to my mom's side of the family. Is everyone in that position is a nurse, a teacher, and something that has to do with kind of giving to kids and giving up and like the child development stuff. And I've always loved it. And I've always feel like I'm just a very big kid at heart. And so it's really easy for me to get along with kids, mainly just because I know how to have fun with them and get through to them on a certain level, because I think that they just recognize that I'm just a big kid at heart as well. But it's just kind of always one of those things that when you have the opportunity to make an impact on someone, it's much more than just the intrinsic feeling. It's something that I just felt like was something I needed to do. And it was something that not only that, but like I love doing it. I love working with kids. I love, especially with lacrosse, like two passions is helping kids and lacrosse. And what better than be able to do both and help create an opportunity for someone to change their life, and change their life in a part that they don't even recognize it at the time. They just think that they're picking up a lacrosse stick for the first time, but then they get into the program and they're going on a week-long backpacking trip in the middle of the Rocky Mountains. And then come back down, they're playing lacrosse and it just sticks with them. And they're learning life lessons from the game of sport of accountability, responsibility, how to work with a team, how to be accountable, and just seeing the success stories of kids sticking with the sport, being the first in their family to graduate high school, being the first to go attend college. It's those stories that make you want to just keep doing it and keep going back for more.
Somebody smarter than both of us said once that we do charitable work because it doesn't make them feel good; it makes us feel good, and I think there's some truth to that. That was
absolutely.
I think that's something that you have to look at, and I think your involvement with the organization is a lifelong involvement, and I think that's something that differs from some of those who have. And I'm making an emphasis of the point because everybody I've talked to, you and I have never met, obviously. Everybody I've talked to said this is the nicest guy you'll ever meet, and I've never met as a coach, as a long-term coach, I've never met a great kid that came from a bad house. Not very often. And so your parents, and that's kind of your point. If your parents watch this, I want them to know, good things happen because the right people did the right things. And I think that's important. And your involvement in that organization is to be applauded. And I think that's something that makes sense.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And definitely all the credit goes to my parents. That's for sure.
All right, so I'll come back to that just slightly, but you get drafted by the Outlaws. You play there for 6 years. That was I'm assuming a great experience. I think you were a 5-time All-Star, not mistaken.
Yep.
When did you know you could make a profession out of playing lacrosse?
Oh man. Um, Not until like 2 or 3 years into my career, probably.
Right.
Um, um, kind of going back to the point where, I really thought I got drafted just as almost as like a publicity type thing to say, we
Local guy.
drafted this local kid and we have
Right.
the local guy. Yeah, exactly. Which the Owls have always done a great job of having that kind of connection, especially with either DU or Denver. And I remember actually it was right at the end of my senior year, and I actually like went up to Coach Brown's office and I actually asked him, I was like, do I even have a chance? Like, is that actually real, or like, there's no way, right? And he was like, no, 100%. You need to go after this full force.
Right.
Because at the time I didn't know if I was going to be taking a senior trip with a bunch of guys on my team, and he was like, no, I think you need to go after this and really pursue it. So I give credit to him for kind of giving me the confidence, and didn't know what to expect when I went into my first practice with the Outlaws. I just knew I was going to go to the first practice and just see what I can do and see how I do against these guys. Because at that time, the Outlaws were, man, they had some legends of the game. Lee Zink, Jesse Schwartzman, Anthony Kelly, Brendan Mundorf, like biggest of big names on this team. And going after the practice, kind of knowing that I was gonna have to get everything I had, just to running and playing as hard as I could, just so I didn't get hurt. I feel like was the main part. But then once I got my opportunity, it actually was a pretty special day. I graduated from DU the same day I got my first professional start, and super special day. Graduated in the morning and played my first game at night, and was able to be successful on the field and put the ball in the back of the net a couple times, and got the respect of my teammates and coaches, and then have ended up playing in almost every game since then. So didn't really know though till after a couple years, knowing that this is something I could do and keep doing while still being able to be a full-time coach and program manager of Denver City Wags.
I asked that question because I think it's important for the kids coming up to understand there's money to be made at lacrosse, but it's not like football or basketball.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned
Correct.
Anthony Kelly. At the time, he's a star for the Outlaws. I'm buying equipment from him in the offseason when he works for STX, living back in Ohio.
Yep.
So it's the idea that I had a father who played for professional hockey, and he was 150 games in the NHL in a day when there were only 6 NHL teams. He played 15 years as a minor leaguer, but used to have to come home in the summertime and roof houses for his father-in-law because he was a journeyman professional that didn't make enough money to pay the rent. And today he'd be a $300,000 second line defenseman and be able to have a normal lifestyle. You guys are in the same situation where money is an issue. That's just the way it is. And I think we'll get, as we get to the PLL stuff, I think that may be changing. But you probably make as much on endorsements as you did playing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think if you look around the league of what everyone does profession, it's when I first came into the league, it was, you had a lot of businessmen, you had a lot of finance people, a lot of teachers actually, so they had the summers off. But everyone always had another job, and then now it's kind of trending more towards you pretty much have everyone that's working in lacrosse of some sort, of either being a college coach, someone that has kind of like their own clinics, camp company that they're going around and doing that whole kind of side of things, and working in lacrosse full time, just so that you always have your stick in your hands. I think now is also a big part of it. But as a pro lacrosse player, you gotta be good at time management and also putting together a bunch of different things to make ends meet. But that's what makes it fun. You're doing what you love for a living, and maybe hopefully someday in our lifetime, guys in the lacrosse world are making, I wouldn't say football or baseball or basketball money because out there, but maybe they can make in hockey money where they're making 300 or 500,000 a year, and who knows where this keep going off, and maybe one day I can be one of those guys that say, yeah, back in my day I was getting paid, peanuts and shells just for going out and playing.
Was your skill set pretty much, did it change much from college to the first playing for Denver? Was it pretty much the same game to you, just faster?
Yes, much faster. I mean, I also think a big part of me kind of needing to learn a little bit was just the shot clock and how fast the game was of D with Coach Brown back in those days. We were completely fine and we were happy with having a 3 to 4 minute possession of just grinding down a defense and kind of playing that style. And then I remember my first couple of times with going to Outlaws either practice or games, someone came down the field and shot in the first 15 seconds of a shot clock, and it like blew my mind. I was like, oh no, like, that never happened at DU practice, because if it did, you're gonna know about it and you're gonna get your butt chewed out. But so I think that was the biggest change of being able to take a couple more risks. Again, I've never really been that player. I've always been kind of a fundamental, make sure it's there type of guy. But I feel like that was one of the biggest things I really had to change in my game was kind of taking more risks and kind of playing a little bit more free flowing.
Along comes the traveling circus called the PLL. Somewhere in the early part of 2019, I'm assuming Paul or somebody, his brother, called you and said, "Hey, let's talk a little bit about that change, because the logo I got behind me is who you played for."
Yeah, it was at the end of the 2018 season, which we had just won the championship with the Outlaws. We knew that this league was going to be coming around and starting, and their whole idea was it was going to be they were trying to call it like true professional lacrosse. They're going to be paying guys more. You're going to have health benefits. You're going to be playing on NBC. You're going to be in front of the spotlight of everyone, and they're hoping to take it to the next level. And every time you heard about it, you just knew that it was going to be something special. But I think I was one of the last 5 guys to sign the contract to go over, because I loved every minute of being a Denver Outlaw. I loved everything because of what they did for me, and the chances that they took on me, and I loved every second of it. And it just kind of came down to the point of what was going to be the best opportunity for me moving forward in my career. But that's I think one of the toughest decisions I've ever had to make, was deciding if I was going to go over or not. And the Outlaws have done just fine without me. I can see that they've still been successful. I'm happy that I made the move, and it's been fun to be a part of this new resurgence of the sport and seeing the sport kind of take off, and now being in households everywhere on NBC, and seeing people who are just a fan of sports now become lacrosse fans because of the outreach that the PLL has done.
You spent your whole life in Denver, both collegiately, professionally, in high school. And so you get identified. Then all of a sudden we make this leap to a place where there's some of the guys who play in the PLL we've interviewed have started thinking that they're eventually going to go back to playing for various cities. That's at least the conversation that they've had with us. But that being the case, having been this iconic person in one place for all of those years, to take a leap out into the circus tent took a great leap of faith on your part, I would think, because you're risking a lot of that sort of cachet that you've built up in with the Denver fan base. I think that would have been a hell of a decision to try to make.
It was tough. Like I said, it was one of the toughest decisions I had to make. And I thought moving forward for my career, it was probably going to be one of the best, but also at the end of the day, it was also one of those, I'm going to take a risk on myself, and I'm going to bet on myself. I know what I can do as a player. I know the benefits I can bring to a team. It was one of those that, I'm going to go do it and try to go help another team. And I'm hoping that they do go back to city someday, and there is a team in Denver, and I find my way onto that team, no matter whichever one that may be, just so I can make that full circle and hopefully end my career playing for a Denver space team again. But yeah, but one of the biggest parts I knew, though, and the selling point was Mike Rabel and Paul Rabel both did tell me that Denver will be a city that they attend each year. And so I made them promise me that, just so I knew that at least I would get to play at least one time in Denver each year. And it's always so special to me. And yeah, so we'll see where it goes. But it was a big leap of faith, and I'm still happy with my decision to go and do it, just because it's been so much fun to be a part of. But hopefully there is a Denver team.
Picking Denver as a place to stop with the PLL every year is not a hard business decision. If all you read is demographics, that's a no-brainer. I mean, I get that part of it. That's like saying you wouldn't play in California or
Yeah,
someplace
yeah,
east. I mean,
exactly.
I'm not suggesting you're going to Dubuque, Iowa next year, but there's a few places you can pretty much, put on the calendar. Hey, would never ask you to compare MLL to PLL, but from what we watch, and maybe this is a more fair question, is it just a little bit faster than the
It
MLL?
is. It is faster. I think the biggest difference is the 10 yards that they've taken out in the middle of the
Right.
field. It makes the game so much quicker that people are just right on top of each other at all times. Like even in the MLL is a step up of college, just of pace, just because of the athletes that are out in the field and the pace of the ball is moving. It is just that much faster. And then it felt like it was another step. And I think it was just because of the fact that the field then was just changed just a little bit more. And I think that's the biggest difference of it, personally, that I felt is just the speed, just because of that, and the shot clock being a little bit faster. But I actually think it's funny. I think it's more of a mental thing for people that the shot clock is shorter, because it's really only 7 seconds, and with the shorter field, it's basically can be the exact same.
Right.
But with that shorter shot clock, it's like a mental thing that people think they got to be moving that much quicker and that much faster into possessions. But
In, in
I think
Detroit here,
I think it's
we
more
get a
of a
chance
mental
to
thing.
watch Canadian television, so we get to watch a lot of CFL. And you got a 20-yard end zone, you got a 30-yard end zone versus a 10-yard. But with only 3 downs, that there was a comparison, and one of the guys in the Windsor Star wrote a column about the difference between the PLL and the relationship to Canadian football, and it's this, that Canadian football only has 3 downs. So you have to be more aggressive on the first and second down to get that opportunity to get a first down. So the ball's in the air,
Yeah.
it's a faster game, and the field's larger. I know they have another player, but when you make it just the opposite, in your case, you made it shorter and faster. In this case, you make it longer and bigger, but it's still the same premise. So it just looks like a faster game, and I think that's, from a television standpoint, that's got to be pretty solid.
I think so too. And I think what one of the biggest things that PLL has done is the broadcasts, the NBC broadcasts that they do with the crew that they have producing it, and the announcers that they get. I think it is so fun to watch, and it's such a fun product just because of how fast it is and the excitement that's going on with it. It's they do an incredible job with that, and I've had friends and past teammates say, like they never really were big into watching lacrosse on TV because sometimes it's tough to follow, or for whatever reasons they may be, but they said the PLL has made them become, watching lacrosse is a mainstay now, that they make sure whenever the PLL is on TV, they're watching, and it's exciting, and it's been fun for them to see the sport and kind of get to where it's going. So hopefully we can keep getting more people to watch and give this sport the credit it deserves.
To wrap up a little bit, I know we're talking Olympic lacrosse. We've had a chance to talk to Steve Stennerson, who's the CEO at USL. We're actually going to talk Monday to Scott Grooft, who's the San Diego Seals president, who's the head of World Lacrosse. There's some conversations that you have a PLL style, you have a major league style, college style, and then you've got box lacrosse. At some point, for it to be a real world game, because the world game is different again, even from what the rest of us played. One of the things that the NBA did 15 years ago was made sure that the rest of the world played the same game. I think of the Rudy movie where he measures it's only 10 feet when they walk in the field house.
Yep.
It gives an understanding of everybody feeling comfortable. I think eventually, and correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe just give me your thoughts, eventually lacrosse is going to have to be played the same way. Maybe the Olympics is a slight variation from that. But with all of these different terms, like you said, you go, all of a sudden the guy takes a shot 15 seconds into the shot clock, and it's like there has to be some transition eventually to get a game we can all watch and understand. Is that a fair estimation?
That is, you hit the nail on the head. I couldn't say it even any better myself. And I feel like I've been a big component of that too, of even looking at like the World Games. Like the World Games is such a different lacrosse that's played than, the MLL, the NLL, and even college. And I think that it does need to come to a point where, it's basically the same game that's played at each level and across the world. And I think it kind of just needs to pick one and kind of get there. I know that there's a bunch of different stuff that go into it of availability and accessibility and whatever and all that may be, because I think we all can can tell that lacrosse isn't the most easily accessible sport, and that there's a lot of stuff that goes into it to be able to be available. But I do think for lacrosse to get, I think it's one of the things for lacrosse to get to that next level is it does need to be the same, and it needs to look the same across all boards. And I also think part of that is also with the girls' game as well. I think the girls' game in the last 5 or 6 years has done a tremendous job of improving the rules of the free-flowing part of the sport and letting the athletes truly shine on the field. I think they're doing an incredible job of that too, and I think that's starting to really show. And I think the girls' game is starting to really take off. At least I can tell, like in the Denver area, as far as like the athletes go. But yeah, I do agree that the sport does need a kind of a uniform type level that everyone's playing at to keep it the same without these little wrinkles that are going on. And
yeah, the girls' game, I think part of it was a lot of guys like me coming into the game, because I was a girls' coach for 8 or 9 years. I'm still involved in the organizational administrative end of the WCLA, which is the intercollegiate club programs. The problem with women is that, not the problem, but the situation with women was the biggest, fastest, strongest was penalized the way they played the game. And the biggest, fastest, strongest wins at every sport. So why would we hinder somebody who's bigger, faster, and stronger than everybody else? And I think the influence of other sports, and I think the other influence of other sports coming in, and honestly, when men coming into the women's sport, Gary Gait going to Syracuse was huge because they started to play midlines. They didn't play just 12 girls. They started to play 18, 19, and there was some morphing in that aspect. Now, I still think women's lacrosse and men's lacrosse are like Ferraris and watermelons. They're different.
Yeah.
You got to treat them different. But athletically, you can't take away somebody who's bigger. In my early days, it's the idea of Jabbar, Abdul-Jabbar not being able, in the days it was Lou Alcindor, they stopped dunks in college because they had a guy who would be so dominant. Well, he learned the skyhook. Well, skyhook worked pretty well all the time he played in the pros. And you don't make rules for one person. You don't make rules in situations. You adapt to it. And if you get your butt kicked, you learn to get better. And I think that's part of that. To wrap this up, you can't say how much I've appreciated this, but what's next for Eric? What's the next thing on the agenda? Just trying to get through the pandemic to the next season?
Trying to get through the pandemic, and honestly just trying to get through it and really looking out for our kids. I think the toughest thing for a lot of this right now is a lot of the kids in our organization missed out on their season being canceled last year, and just the mental and physical health of kids right now is kind of at the forefront of me of getting kids back out and running out and playing and getting them to be healthy and being able to be back and just kind of be back into a normal setting and being able to be back in schools. And so, that's at the top of my mind right now. But, I'm hoping to go into another season and make this, I think this is going to be year 9 I'm going into of my professional career. And obviously the goal is always to win a championship. So I'm going to do whatever I can to help us get to there and keep just enjoying this lacrosse thing.
I don't want to impose, but I've got this we had talked earlier about my little crease guy he's going to be a freshman. I think he's going to be a Division I player at some point. I think he has that talent. He's got a savvy game. He does things that, if there's one tip you'd give a small kid coming into a high school program that's been pretty successful, what would you tell Colin? I'm just curious, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, that's tough. There's so many things to think of.
Just one thing to concentrate.
I just think to concentrate to no matter where you are on the field, to be a threat. And I think that was one of the biggest words of advice I ever got. Is it that to me when I heard that, it was there's one ball for 22 guys in the field or 20 guys on the field at a time. Like, what are you going to do without it that makes the defense worry about you, and what can you do in a way that can make the biggest impact on the opposing defense? That sometimes that is, fall in a slide, catch the ball and finish it. The other times it's dragging your guy away from the goal so that slides long enough that someone can dodge underneath and score. I think it's just always just that constant, no matter where you are at any time on the field, you have to be a threat to score and a threat to defense.
That's cool. Well, listen, everything I was told about you is absolutely correct. You're just a really.
I appreciate that.
Man. I appreciate the conversation. You certainly give great process to those kids who maybe weren't Paul Rabel coming up. and you obviously can be the best at something if you put your mind to it, and if the brakes fall. So just the fact that you've done so much has been pretty terrific. So thank you for talking to us about the program, and we can only wish you the best the rest of the way.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on. Fun talking lacrosse. I appreciate it.